Welcome everyone back to Pommy and Oz. How are we all doing? Hope we're all doing really well. Weekend's over, nice and chill. Just everyone needs to smile a bit, don't they? If you're new around here, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Does help the channel out. Thank you very much to the members. We had a great members stream last night. It was a good crack, so thank you very much for that. And today, I promised we'd do a What Would Pom Do? So, those who don't know me, I am one of these people that when there is an issue or there is a problem, I have to fix it. I can't let it lie. And I thought, I've been a bit down with the club, and I have actually been up since about 4 o'clock this morning working on this. So this is like 12 hours coming to you. So I think firstly what we got to do is look at the predicament Carlton are in at the moment. And there's a lot going round, do you know what I mean? The players are coming out and saying stuff. Cherra's just done an interview which is going to upset a lot of people. It's going to upset a lot of people. I don't like hearing it as well. I mean, you don't like hearing what you've been striving for not being the goal. But that being said, I promised you a WWPD. What would Pom do? So firstly, I think you've got to look at what is the issue. What is the issue? And at the moment, there's a couple of issues I see. The big one for me is you go and look at numbers. You go and look at numbers to see if they back up what you think. So the common thing at the moment is kicking. And I think when you look at 80 plus points from turnover, that's a problem. So what I want to do is, firstly, you've got to look at the game style. So we can't change the game style. That would be simple. Change the game style, wouldn't it? That would be it. So I've got to think of it this way. I've got the game style. How do I fix the game style? Okay, so let's go straight into it. Now, the key metric is looking at what Voss has done is he's trying to be a bit more controlled. And I want you to try and visualise tiki-taka. Because if you understand tiki-taka, which is a possession-built system built around short, sharp passing that sacrifices aesthetics for results. And what it does is it's the antichrist of a zonal system, which all 18 teams play defensively in midfield. But also what it does is it negates foot speed because the ball breaches the lines of defence for you. And with a very structured running ahead of the ball approach and a good understanding of your roles, it makes you look quicker than you are. So when you look at the list makeup, that makes total sense of why you'd play it, right? So that being said, my first synopsis is it's not game style, it's nothing mythical, it's execution, right? So let's see if the numbers back that up. So with a tiki-taka system, what you'd have to understand is where does the ball get lost in the AFL? And that's quite simple, isn't it? It's the back line. You are turning defence into attack. So what you've got here in front of your cute little eyes is, quite simply, it is the kicking efficiency of just the back line in the AFL. Now, I want you to notice we're 11th. Ignore the other numbers so far because I'll come to them in the next slide. But this is where it all starts. So when you look at, say, tiki-taka for an example, when possession is won back, one of the key fundamentals for that is your goalkeeper, your fullback in AFL, has to be a good user of the football. Your centre-backs have to be good users of the football. They've got to be able to pass and they've got to be able to hit targets, and they effectively change. And that's what happens in the AFL. So if you look at a really good team there, now there's a few anomalies, right, from the ladder, but we are mirroring almost identically in every numerical order Port Adelaide over the last 4 years since they won the minor premiership. How the backline moves. Makes sense. Voss knows that. Half the coaching staff, especially the development and the skills coaches, they are from Port Adelaide. They get that system. Now, big difference between Carlton and them, right? But you look at teams that are traditionally, let's say, teams that do understand what is required of this, and you look at teams particularly who really do go ham hock I don't know if that is even a word. I might have just made that up, but we're going to go with it. If you look at teams that score heavily from D50, it's a really interesting little measurement, if you actually look at it, that the teams there have got really, really big numbers. So if you look at a team that scored really heavily from the back half, Melbourne, Adelaide, Geelong have started to improve this week. St Kilda are one of the top teams, incidentally, from points sourced in D50. But if you look at it, we're going to look at them. Carlton match up to St Kilda, who have got the most points scored from D50, right? But then if you look at the others, Melbourne, who are very steady defending as well from that avenue, you can see there, 76. So you're looking for that, and Carlton aren't too far off it, right? Now, I want you to bear that in mind when we come to the last slide. When we come to the last slide, that's going to be very important for everyone to understand why I've said keep in mind on that slide. Because if you come here to turnovers per possession, and this is the way you make it fair, when people look at stats, they look at the whole picture, and like if a team kicks a lot like Carlton, looking at just kicking efficiency is mental, right? But turnovers per possession, this is ranked from best to worst. Carlton at 12. So you can see there that a lot of these teams have shifted. Now, I mentioned Geelong at the start. Very prudent. They don't turn the ball over in the back half. North Melbourne might surprise you there, but genuinely, that's because they get scored on heavily when you enter. So you've got to look and try and use a bit of logic. But we mentioned St Kilda there. They're very prudent with their ball use. And I want you to keep this just in mind. Collingwood are very interesting there. Do you know what I mean? Almost matching up like for like with Carlton. Do you know what I mean? Some more turnovers per game, but look at the per possessions. And that's probably the most important one. Now, when we come to the midfield, and just think of the tactics here. This is kicking efficiency, Carlton a sixth. That's quite sexy, isn't it? That is quite sexy. Now, you see here, the least turnovers possession, right? Now, we're going to just keep these in mind. These are good numbers, right? These are really good numbers. And then if we come to the forward half, again, kicking, Carlton 8th, right? Carlton 5th. But this is where I want you to look. This is the forward half, right? This is the full team when you correlate them. And this is sorted by meters gained per possession. Carlton are bottom 3, right? Now with St Kilda. Now, there's a difference, massive difference in the structure of how St Kilda play to how Carlton play. Now, the biggest one for you to really look at is it's how they play the game in a physical way. What St Kilda do really well is, if you look, they are the number one intercepting side. They set a real heavy spread around the ground. They're really at fall of the ball. They are really in the hot areas. They don't drop back. They are really proactive in how they work. And then if you also look at the way that they play, it's their off-ball movement is insane. Now, that is key. I want you to look at off-ball movement and this meters gained per disposal, right? Because that's telling you two things about Carlton. That's saying to you that a lot of our kicks are nothing sideways, boring kicks. They're very easy kicks. And when Carlton start to add that fold and that dimension and that try and be more offensive, that's why the meters gained per possession are so low. And if you look, the rest of the numbers stack up. Carlton, the number one side, turnovers per possession. They don't turn it over enough. They don't turn it over a lot. You look at kicking efficiency, mid-table, right? So something doesn't mirror up. And you look at the teams here of the lower on the ladder. Collingwood are there. Very territory-based. The system is totally different. It's get the ball forward and then get around it and the pressure. And what these numbers are telling you is Melbourne are a very controlled side. Sydney, Geelong, these guys are suddenly at the top of the ladder. But then if you look at the meters gained as well, do you know what I mean? These guys are also very high up because they're moving the ball with purpose. Now, where does that come in? Now, what I want you to think about is how Carlton move, right? So when you look in the back half, a big part of my fix would be they don't play on instinct. So a great example, and there's numerous examples throughout this season, but about round 3, Carlton really started focusing on Adam Sard to exit D50. And That's because Stock started to move into the midfield. They need a reliable. Now, you look at Carlton when they get the ball. What you will find happens is something like this. Now, what you can see here is just a basic intercept mark. And what I've done is to make it more easy, I've tried to just put it there without the opposition. Because without the opposition, it makes it look a little bit more rudimentary. But you will find that when Carlton are trying to exit the ball, these players will run towards, right? And they'll make leads. Now, Carlton, when we talk about spread, it gets lost in translation. People think spread is really complicated. It's not. The definition of spread is the separation of players. The separation of players, creating avenues and options to get the ball. Now, go back to what we said about tiki-taka and the football, the soccer version of what we're trying to do. You're trying to break lines by the ball going through lines while moving together in set shape patterns. Now, Carlton quite often do this little zigzag run. So what will happen is Sard will come this way. And what that does is opens up this side, the opposite side, right? Now, what you found Brisbane do last week and what you found a lot of the teams did, Richmond, is they've looked for that run and they've put a man on him to keep it hard. Now, what that's done is created, the only option to do here is that the spread has gone to the right-hand side of the ground and there's an easy kick here and they've left that open, which then they feast on. They feast on. And through not thinking, through pressure, it's gone straight into the trap, the ball comes down. Right? Or what happens, and we saw this a lot, and I implore you to go and watch the third quarter because I've never seen it happen so much. The ball will come here, and usually what you see good teams do is the spread happens. Players are actively running in. Now, because of fear, mindset, negativity, the players start to stay very condensed. These guys will go here, and you know what's coming. The bomb's going to go there. But this game plan requires incredible movement. That is why Nick Austin has really focused the last two windows on getting elite runners. Because you've got to attack the space. And that is basically the premise of this game plan. And it's what Ken Hinkley talks about a lot. You are creating these avenues. It's meant to be a short hit-up kick. You saw this quite a few times here. And Carlton turned it over quite a few times here. That Sard would get it here. And by this stage, the players have stopped. And they take too long. Wheatering does it quite a lot. They take too long. The initial initiative is players are moving. If the ball goes quickly, it's bang, 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 right? But what happens is it allows the forward press. So what I'm going to do is just draw a little line, really, for you so you can see it. What happens is say that's the forward pressure line. By the time Carlton have panicked, suddenly the opposition are here and they're hemmed in. The only option is kicking it long. They're already set. Remember what I said about the system and the zone. The zone for them is already in our D50. And before you know it, if that gets turned over, you've got one-on-ones. You may even be outnumbered if you're Brisbane. And that's a really important part to think. So how do you fix that? That's not normal. So that's not normal. The slowness, it requires quick decision makers and it requires you to move. Now, the numbers do clearly state that although it appears Carlton are a bad kick inside, numbers don't lie. Do you know what I mean? Carlton can hit up short targets. The drop-off, though, when Carlton are in a pressure of over 160 is astronomical. And that's not from kicking skills or handball skills. That is from, one, the movement stops, so easy kicks. Geelong are masters of this because people always go, Geelong are a marvellous kick inside. It's kind of true, but also their uncontested possessions, the same as St Kilda, are absolutely astronomical in the terms of the way that they can hit spaces. And it's uncontested possessions in that midfield. They work really hard. Look at Brisbane. They did it to us and capitalised. Their ability to go from territory to uncontested to territory to contested is really good. It's flicking the switch. So how would I fix that? I think at the moment what Carlton have got to do, and if they're serious, they've got to look at the mentality of these players. Go back and watch Jacob Wheater in 2018, 2019, 2020, right? Early career, first 3 years. He would see ball and hit it. That's what Liam Jones did. He would see the target and hit it. You've got to remember, we weren't very good then. Now what you're seeing Issa did it, Whelan did it, Walsh did it this week. Young's forever doing it. Players getting to set mark, waiting, looking round. You can see they're waiting for that U-shaped run from Mr. Sard or Mr. Doherty. And they're losing the initiative of that initial centre-half back running he's got free. Because it takes a moment to go from an attacking zone to a defensive zone, and genuinely there is space in 55 out from goal. The corridor kick that you all want, that's not just the corridor kick, that can be a hit-up target on the wing. Now go back and watch the third. There is numerous moments that Carlton have that lead and they're ignored. And the amount of times I hear you on the watch-along in the forward half say, why don't we lower our eyes? And that's it. It's about getting them to go back to instincts, because when they were kids, they did that. When they were juniors, they did that. Early part of their career, they did that. They haven't forgotten it. What at the moment is, it seems like this system, and you saw it with Teague, and you saw it with Bolton, when they added layers, that these players start to resort to kind of their instinct, but their instinct is now clouded by conversations. A good example of this is if you're in business, your CEO and your board of directors will set a profit loss. Then you might have middle managers like myself who then have to put the building blocks in place for that to happen. In reality, then paper numbers get lost because people get sick, people leave, people quit, people come in who are new and they've got to get up to speed. So it's about constantly adapting. But when you're under pressure, you resort to your basics. You resort to what you know. And if what you know is warped and is what you know is being fed and you're starting to overthink it, you will never do anything under pressure if you're thinking about it. You have to resort to type. And I love pressure. And it's all about doing them things. So I would get these boys this week going back to basics. Whether it's kick to kick, whether it's some simple games, maybe something as simple as getting these boys to replicate pressure. You can't replicate 85,000 at the G in training. But what you can do is you can replicate three steps. These boys are only allowed to run or walk 3 steps, 5-second rule. When you get the ball, you've got 5 seconds to get rid of it. And play a game of touch AFL. So it's even harder to escape. There's no tackles. It's literally pulling a ribbon. So they've got to work quickly and get them to have a bit of fun with it and get them to work on their instincts, because at the moment when the pressure's coming, you can see it's mechanical, and mechanical never works, right? The best players at anything are free-flowing. Your Federers and stuff, that's instinctive. And you can train instinct back, but it's a very hard, very focused thing. The other thing Carlton have got to do is, under pressure, they start to react to pressure. And one of the big things they do is, if we go back to the tactics sheet, is you'll see this, right? So what we're going to do is clear this for you. And I want you to view this here as the small forwards, right? So now, where you want the small forwards, and you look at Cameron, the max you want them when you're defending is here, right? The max. Because one of them, Cameron, does it all the time, will go with that key forward when, as soon as the ball is won here, he's down here. Now, a big part of this system for Voss is locking it in the forward line. Carlton are one of the highest scoring teams from forward half intercepts, right? However, our small forwards at the moment are woeful. And you find that their average position this week was about here. You need Durden, Motlop, and always when he comes back to be leading that charge of locking it in. Because under pressure, what you find is, instead of being here, they're here, right? As soon as the ball is lost in the forward half. They're trying to defend where the midfielders are. The midfielders are almost here, but then there's a massive gap between the defence, and that is why it's so easy. Remember when I said, playing possession game, you manufacture it with speed on the ball, not foot speed. When you've got massive gaps, you can play into that. And Carlton's spread is, if anything, too dramatic in defence, because what they're doing is they start to fall back and there is no pressure. You look at the kicks Brisbane had outside of D50. No wonder they scored so many points from it. No wonder they had it so easy, because there was no pressure at the fall of the ball. And that is another fundamental. And these are basics. So when people talk about basics, for me, they get way too clouded in basics of kicking and handballing. The basics also are your position and your role. And that's from almost like, you know what Motlop and Durden are like. They're popular members of the group, and it's probably because they care. It's hard to see your midfield struggle and not get there. But that's discipline. And we saw discipline go with Newman's punch. That's discipline there. And this role and this system is very discipline based. It's almost synergy that is the major part missing from Carlton. And you saw it. If you go back and watch the Eagles game, what I'm talking about happened a lot. Wrong. But Eagles were just too bad to put it away. But when it worked, it looked really good. When players did keep their width, did keep their depth. And that's a key one, width and depth. At the moment, it's becoming too condensed. And then when the ball is won, that's too far back. There's a lot of space then to pick the zones if you intercept it in the midfield. You watch Brisbane, they did that a lot. Outside 70 kind of pinged it sideways to try and shift the zone, which then allowed a very easiness. And that is it there, the big thing. And that's something that I would definitely work on with the boys, going back to basics, stripping it back, because this system isn't complex, but it requires elite running off and on with the ball. And it's not quick running, it's attacking the space, but it also requires you to know when to go fast and when to go slow. And it's weird, because you've all said it as well. St Kilda, this game, half-time, the numbers are good. And they don't lie. It's the execution of that. And that is what's killing the boys. That execution is really hard. And that's probably for some indecision. But I hope that helps with, like, what would Pom do? I personally like a territory game plan. I think territory suits these boys. Playing a territory game plan, get there at the fall of the ball. I understand Voss is sticking to what he knows. And also, I'd say that this game plan, when it works, is probably a lot more well-rounded and more avenues to goal than the old method, right? If they're sticking with this game plan, this week, the core fundamentals, whatever the team is selected, is based around making sure that you're selfish in playing your role. Because at the moment, people are very undisciplined and coming back. But I hope that helps you get to understand it. I'm not saying it's going to be easy to fix. I'm not saying it is. But for me, it's having a knowledge of where we are as a club and how you can turn them figures into a little bit easier if there is some movement ahead of the ball, particularly in that forward half of the ground. There's way too much reliance on Harry and Charlie taking marks, and then when they come back to help the transition out, there's no one there, and that's the only time you see the smalls. One of them gets caught at full forward. So hopefully that helps. I've really enjoyed making this video. I'll be back explaining it a bit more on Monday tonight on Blue Abroad, but till next time, I'll have the VFL wrap for you soon as well.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella bad.